Hello, MCU fans! Today is going to be my breakdown and review of Daredevil Born Again, Episode 7, which was indeed music to my ears. So there will be spoilers, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have an April contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And I'll announce the March winners in my next video. Also, we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. So I always love to start with a timeline overview, and I've added a couple new things. We have entries for the Echo and Hawkeye flashbacks in 2007 to 2008, where Echo and her dad moved to New York, and of course Fisk pounds on that ice cream vendor. And then we have Daredevil seasons 1 through 3, which take place from 2017 to 2018. You'll see why I added those in just a minute. We also have a column for the entry, so you can kind of keep track of where we are in the MCU. And then finally, we get to Episode 7. We can also add that in March of 2027, because it's basically taking place the next day after Angela was, of course, attacked by Muse. Okay, so a couple cool timeline things from the episode. Fisk mentions it's been just over a year when Daredevil vanished, and that mostly works. I mean, we're in March of 2027, and he quit being Daredevil in October of 2025, so it's about a year and 5 months, maybe a year and 4 months, but yeah, pretty much works. And I like this line even better because he says for 10 years he built his criminal operation and it was fail-proof until Daredevil had him unjustly arrested. Well, I don't know if it was unjustly arrested, right, Kingpin? But this works really well because now we know his original organization was around for 10 years. Now he's talking about his arrest in the first Daredevil season, which was 2015, which means his organization started in 2005. And that was indeed 2 years before William and Echo moved to New York. So I love it. That fits together perfectly. All right, so on to the breakdown. So I want to start with a Winston Supreme Canadian whiskey Easter egg. That seems to be the favorite brand of whiskey of many of the Netflix characters. But also I love the New York Bulletin Easter egg, because remember, that is where Ben Urich used to work, and it's just kind of a reminder that, you know, BB is his niece, and one of these days, she's going to figure out the Kingpin killed her uncle. Cannot wait. That is going to be insane. All right, so we see that the Muse is weighing heavily on Fisk's mind. He says, when you look out the window, what do you see? And I love that Daniel says Starbucks, but Buck wisely says voters. Every politician should be looking out the window to see voters. Anyway, Fisk says, no, fear, a city churning to a stop. And that's all, of course, because of the Muse. So then we learn something interesting about just how much blood Angela lost. So they say a girl named Angela Del Toro was dropped off at the hospital and she lost like 2,500 milliliters of blood. So I've given blood before. I wondered how it compared to that. When you give blood, you give 1 pint or 500 milliliters of blood. And that's approximately 10% of your blood supply. Well, she lost 5 times that. So yeah, she lost almost 50% of her blood supply. My word, it's amazing she was even conscious. That's crazy. Anyway, Fisk then learns about the return of Daredevil. They say the girl claims she was rescued by the vigilante known as Daredevil, and look at his face. He's so mad, and he just says, he's back. Buck, though, has a good point. He says, well, if he's going after Muse, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? And then Kingpin just screams. He's so mad. Not so much at Buck. He's just mad that, yes, he could actually benefit from what Daredevil's doing, but he hates him so much. So he explains, he took down my entire business. He went on a rampage. He tracked down all my workers and savagely beat them. So this is after that first arrest in Daredevil Season 1. He basically went after all of his workers. And then I love that he complains that Daredevil did it without due process, without standing, or legal cause. Because I'm like, really, Kingpin? That's the part that bothered you? I mean, everything that Kingpin has done is without due process, standing, or legal cause. But anyway, now he's the mayor, right? In fact, Buck reminds him of that. You're the mayor now. To which Kingpin says, yes, I have more resources. It's kind of dawning on him. I have the responsibility to protect this city from anyone who steps outside the law. So yeah, he's lost some power by not being the Kingpin, but he's gained a lot of power because he runs the city. And then I thought this was interesting. The Kingpin says, when I brought you over from your previous life. So what exactly was Buck's previous life? Now, in the comics, he went by the codename Bullet and was an agent of the United States government who had the highest level of security clearance any agent could have. So are they referring to that? Are they saying in the MCU, Buck was a government agent? Or did Buck used to work for Kingpin? I'm not real sure. Let me know your thoughts on that. But I really, really like Buck. He is a very cool character. All right, so then we see Angela waking up in the hospital and reliving her trauma as she's hearing Daredevil say, "I'm here." And we see that Matt is reliving the trauma as well. Of course, it's a little easier for him to get through it when Heather can join him in the shower. But while she's in there, she notices he has a very nasty bruise. So naturally, she asks him about it. She says, "You didn't get those bruises at work." And I love this excuse. It's so pitiful. He says, "Well, I went for a walk. I'm having trouble sleeping, okay? But I do occasionally bump into things." Okay, you don't get that scar by bumping into things. I mean, does he think Heather is an idiot? Maybe she is. I don't know. But no, I think she's going to figure all this out. She is. She is no dummy. She is going to realize he is Daredevil. Anyway, she says, "You're beat up. Is this some kind of self-harm?" That's a great question. But he says, "Look, Heather, you realize I used to have a whole other life, and it was a lot different than this." Of course, he's really referring to Daredevil, but she's thinking he's referring to his old firm and his old friends, and of course, Karen, who she might be a little jealous of because he was in love with her for so long. Then he says, "Sometimes this all feels fake," which naturally hurt her feelings at first, but he's like, "No, I guess I feel like I'm being fake, living this false life, if you will." And she says something so important. She says, "You have been tamping down trauma for so long." Of course, she's probably referring to Foggy's death, right? But really, he's been tramping down trauma since his dad died when he was a kid. So much trauma. But then they have a couple more special moments together, and in fact, this particular moment will come in handy later. Okay, so I do have a question. Who exactly is Cherry's contact? Because Matt says, "I need you to reach out to your contacts, basically find out some more information on Muse." So I asked that question in my last video, and Ivan left a terrific comment suggesting that Agent Kim might be Cherry's informant. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because we saw them hanging out together way back in episode 1, so we know they're good friends, and now Agent Kim is working for Kingpin, so she would have insider information, and now she's out searching for evidence at Muse's lair. So I'm wondering, if they are working together, will Kingpin find out, and will her life be in danger? Anyway, Cherry wants out of the whole thing, right? He tells Matt, "If you want to blow up your life again, you go ahead, but I'm out." And then Matt has a good point. He says, "There was a time when you were on the force, and moments like this, you called me." So yeah, everybody's trying to get Matt to not be Daredevil again, but he knows he's got to do it. Okay, so then Matt goes to see what information he can get from Angela, and I just thought this was a fun little attention to detail thing. If we zoom in on this board, you can see it's got her name on it. I mean, they took the time to get all these props right, and I just think that's cool. So she says, "Daredevil saved me." And he's like, "Yep, I heard." Then he says, "What can you tell me that was out of the ordinary?" Well, speaking of out of the ordinary, they show us this shot of one of the things he drew, one of his images, and that thing is nasty. Man, Muse had some of the most messed up drawings I've ever seen. Anyway, Angela says he had these sketches, and he kept talking about them. He kept doing them. So obviously that's Agent Kim, who's investigating Muse's lair. But what I thought was fascinating is Angela was saying she saw him making the drawings. So last episode, it seemed like she was carried in and immediately drugged up. But I guess not. Maybe he kept her captive while he was doing his drawings. That's just so messed up. Anyway, Agent Kim comes back with her report for Fisk, and she says that they found some very special canvas. Only 12 people had purchased it, and Bastion is the only one they couldn't find. But that's not all. Agent Kim also has a report that he hands to Kingpin, and we learn that Bastion was involuntarily committed when he was 15, basically was declared insane, and then we learn that there's only a handful of truly elite Taekwondo coaches, and that's why his father hired Coach Lee to live with them and coach his son, and that's when Bastion was 16. So remember, at 15, he was declared insane, gets out. Now at 16, he has a Taekwondo coach, and that body shows up at the estate because Bastion kills him within a couple months. My word. So no surprise that he's then committed again at age 17 and yet again at age 20. Dude is absolutely insane. Wild. Anyway, Daredevil is now out looking for clues in Muse's hideout, and sure enough, he is able to remember what Heather's face felt like as he rubs one of the portraits that Muse has painted. So it's a little creepy that Muse was able to perfectly paint her face. The dude was obsessed with Heather, for sure. And then, I love it. It's always nice to see Powell get popped upside the head. He comes in, "Hey," and Daredevil throws his billy club, which bounces off his head and knocks him out. I could watch that happen all day long. The dude deserves it every single time. Okay, so now he has run facial recognition on those portraits, and he's also figured out that it's Heather Glenn. But Kingpin says the task force can handle this because you are the thin, dark line protecting the city. Now, if you know anything about the police, at least the good ones, they have the motto, the thin blue line. But notice that Kingpin has changed it to the thin dark line. Yep, that is just one more indication that his task force can do whatever they want. They do not have to follow the law. All right, so now let's pick up with Bastian, who's being counseled by Heather, and he's telling her about a dream. He says, it's my 8th birthday, and we're out the house upstate. And I go outside, and someone hands me a bouquet of red balloons. No surprise, red, right? Blood red. But here's the key. He says, and they call me to come over, and when I join them, they don't see me. All right, is this another hint about an ability that we all thought Muse was going to have, but didn't seem to display? And that is that he can basically hide himself from others. Because remember, I mentioned in the previous episode that they said he somehow managed to avoid detection from any of the city's surveillance footage. And that's because in the comics, he has this like sensory deprivation type power where he can literally pull scents and sounds into him like a black hole. So, I don't know. Are they hinting at the fact that he was supposed to have this power and they just decided to not go there? I'm really curious. Anyway, a bummer they didn't use this power, but I still loved Muse. He was a fantastic villain. All right, so this is when Heather needs to bolt. When he starts saying, all I ever wanted was to be an artist, to be the person I am now, and that's thanks to you. Look at those creepy eyes, man. Those creepy eyes. He says, you've unlocked something in me, Dr. Glenn. This city, it's finally starting to see me for who I really am. And then he gets this nosebleed and starts to draw the Muse mask with his blood. Seriously, Heather, this is when you needed to bolt. Because he says it's only when we embrace who we are that we can truly be free. And he looks up and says, you already know, Dr. Glenn. I can see it in your face. I know what you're thinking, Dr. Glenn. There's only one question on your mind right now. Can I make it to the door in time? Oh, my word. This episode was so well written. I was terrified for Heather the whole time. Really, really good writing. Anyway, the answer is no. She cannot make it to the door in time, but he can slam her into it. So he knocks her out, and when she wakes up, he's in his full Muse garb. My word. My name is Muse. And then he writes Muse on her arm. But what I thought was so cool is that's the exact way he does his signature on the murals. Look at that. Isn't that such cool detail? Love it. Love it. Then she says, please don't hurt me. And he says, honestly, I can't guarantee that. Then he starts to cut her arm, and no, I'm not going to show it because it's so gross. But trust me, he really, really cuts her arm, right? Then he lays out the canvas because he is ready to create his final masterpiece. And then she taunts Muse by saying, anybody who needs a mask is a coward. Oh my, what's she going to say to Matt when she realizes he's Daredevil, right? Anyway, Muse does not like that one bit. He's just about to kill her when suddenly in comes Daredevil, uses that billy club again, bounces it off his head. That's great. Then, when he reaches for a knife, this was vicious. Now Daredevil throws his billy club, but the grappling hook function is open and he uses it to latch on to Muse. Ugh. Blood flies everywhere. We're not going to show that, but it was nasty. Anyway, Heather, though, is the one to finally take him down, shooting him so many times that the gun clicks empty by the time she's done. Crazy. And then she passes out, but not before Matt tries to comfort her by saying, it's all over, Heather. It's all over. So yeah, he probably shouldn't have said her name. And then finally the task force arrives. Daredevil's done all the hard work, right? But they say breach and get in the bottom door, and breach and get into Heather's office. But sure enough, the action is over and Muse is dead. It is kind of interesting. He's almost posed like some of his murals with the one arm raised defiantly in the air. So I thought that was a cool detail. And then this is funny. Powell's looking around to make sure everything's safe, but I would have loved it if Daredevil's billy club had come flying in the room yet again and popped him in the head. That can never happen too many times as far as I'm concerned. And then we learn this interesting detail about what Muse was planning to do. So Cole explains he had a gun. It was part of some murder-suicide grand plan. So yeah, I'm kind of bummed that we lost Muse so soon. He's such a great villain. But on the other hand, this was the perfect way for his story to end, right? Heather's the one that seemed to unlock this desire in him to paint the murals. Well, now he was going to kill her and then kill himself. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you bummed we lost Muse so soon? Okay, so then we see that Fisk is starting to take control of the narrative. When Cole says, he was here, Daredevil, Fisk says, well, what we do know is that you and your men did your job and that you stopped the Muse. So, hey, when you're the mayor, you can decide how the public is going to hear what actually happened. He is learning how to use his position to create power. Unfortunately for Fisk, we see there are other forms of information besides just the mayor's office because the BB report has already found a witness who says they saw Daredevil enter the room. Oh, but then Daniel takes control. He says the task force took out Muse, not Daredevil. And she's like, what, are you actually threatening me? And he's like, oh, no, I'm presenting you with an opportunity. And I'd be so stoked if you made the right call, you know? Oh man, dude is becoming a mini kingpin. That is scary. Meanwhile, we see that Matt is comforting Heather in the hospital, and this cracked me up. He says the doctors say you only have minor lacerations. Okay, I'm not going to show the injury, but you all saw it, right? That was not a minor laceration. What on earth does the doctor think is a major laceration? Anyway, she says, I killed him, Matt, and she's crying. And he consoles her by saying, you had no choice. But then she says, I think he said my name. Yep, Daredevil. So I'm telling you, she's going to know his identity by episode 9, if not even by episode 8, for sure, right? Let me know your thoughts on that. And then we do indeed see that the task force is getting the credit for the kill because they're saying Bastion Cooper, also known as the Muse, killed by Mayor Fisk's vigilante task force. In fact, we even see the press conference where he says, I promised to keep the streets safe and I delivered. And they lift up Muse's mask. Man, oh man, this task force is really going to become a big, big problem. All right, so let's close things down with the whole Luca situation. So earlier in the episode, Luca and Vanessa have a secret meeting, and Vanessa says, you've been causing a lot of chaos, Luca. Man, he sure has been causing a ton of chaos. However, Luca responds by saying Fisk sent Buck to ding me for nearly $2 million. Then he should have known something was going on when Vanessa says, no, that was me. So yeah, Vanessa and Fisk have been working together this whole time. And then Luca says, why does he even want to be mayor anyway? You know, what's his angle? And we're all kind of asking that, right? We want to know, what is Fisk looking to get out of this? But Luca says, we're not earning like we were with you. It was better then, and you know that. So yeah, basically, Vanessa did a better job running the organization than Fisk. He says it's time for a change, to which Vanessa says, are you asking for my permission or my help? And he says, that's up to you. So we were kind of left wondering, is Vanessa going to turn on Fisk or not? So let me know your thoughts on what you think this scene was telling us. But we see Vanessa typing on her phone and telling Luca the address that Fisk is at, 32 Withers Street, and that he is alone. And then that smile on her face, right? Is that a smile of goodbye Fisk or goodbye Luca? What's her goal here, right? Anyway, we see that Luca has received the text, and Fisk is inside having another one of his cheat meals. Dude's going to be huge before you know it. So Luca sneaks in and sees him sitting all by himself in the restaurant, and he's ready to take him out, right? But there, if you look real closely, you can see hiding in the shadows is Buck, and Buck takes him out first. Yep, the Buck stops here. He guns down Luca and comes out with his silencer on his gun, having done his job. And then Fisk says, could you call Vanessa and ask her if she'd like me to bring her something home? So yeah, I think they planned this together. If nothing else, the song being played is a big hint. Don't go, please stay. I think that's basically Vanessa saying to Kingpin, I don't want you to go. I want you to stay, but I want you to come back to your old ways again. I think she set up this situation to see, would he be willing to have Luca killed? And sure enough, he did. He passed the test. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. But I think Vanessa and Fisk are more united than ever. All right, so we only have 2 episodes left. Next week is episode 8. I am betting we're going to see Frank back again and maybe even Bullseye. Let me know your thoughts on what you expect about the next episode, but I cannot wait. So don't forget about that contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. And we have the membership option in case you're interested in that. And I always love to mention the Discord. Here we are in the spoiler section for Daredevil Born Again, talking about how it's peak and absolute Daredevil. So we have 2,100 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.